Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kitten, also known as the Kitten Choreographer. My pronouns are he, they, and I am a teen with a passion for animal rescue and, in particular, kitten rescue. Today's video is going to be the next episode in my series, A Beginner's Guide to Kitten Care. And this episode is going to be all about kitten food. I am making this series because a lot of information out there about kittens is for people that already know the basics, but this series is for you if you don't necessarily know the basics about kittens. My first episode in this series was all about the basic supplies that you need for kittens, and this episode is going to be dedicated to kitten food. All about kitten food, what food is best, let's see whether wet or dry food is best, and even how much to feed your kitten. So, yeah, let's get into it. Let's start first with what food is best. That's probably the most overwhelming part of kitten food because there is so much out there. And it's good that we have so many options out there just because every cat's needs are different and we want to know what's best for our cat and give our cat the best food possible. But let's talk about what food is best. A lot of people on the internet want to make cat food like this big, important subject, and they want to make it the most complicated thing ever where you feel like if you don't feed your cat the exact right food, they're going to be so sick and pass away super young. And that's if you mess up by not, feeding your cat, a million different probiotics and supplements and wet food and all this big, fancy, expensive stuff. But I'm here to tell you, I'm here to reassure you that it's not that difficult. Yeah, I even put in my notes here that there are so many videos on social media of people adding protein powders to their food and other stuff. But it's really not necessary to have all those probiotics and proteins and supplements for your cat to have a healthy life. If you want to do that and you want to really take that time and energy researching and buying and spend that money to give your cat 14 different things a day, then you can. You can go for it. I'm sure it's not bad for your cat most of the time, but it is really not necessary. So let's assume you are preparing to adopt a kitten. There are a few things you should consider here. First, you want to start your kittens on the food they're already on, and then slowly wean them onto a different food that you want to feed them. You can do this by starting out with their old food, and put half of it in with half of their new food. Do that for a couple days, then put 3/4 of the new food with 1/4 of the old food, and then lessen the amounts until you are fully transitioned over to that new food. You're gonna want to do this because it can upset their stomachs to just cold turkey switch them to a new food, and you don't want to upset their stomachs. That can cause vomiting, diarrhea, stuff you don't want with your kittens. So you're gonna want to ask the shelter or rescue you're adopting from what food they're on and get a little bit of that and then slowly transition them onto whatever food you decide. Or you don't even have to switch them over at all. If you think that food is working for them and you've talked to the rescue and it seems to be good, you can just keep them on that food. And if it's not possible, say you just find a kitten outside, you don't know what food they were on previously, it's okay. You can just start them on whatever food you want, but be prepared for a few stomach issues there. And if you find a cat outside, there's almost always going to be some issues there. I'm going to be making a few videos in the future all about what to do if you find a kitten outside, so stay tuned for that as well. What food is best? I'm going to give you some recommendations here. Let's talk about studies. There are a lot of studies done that show what kitten food is best, but remember that a lot of these studies are done by the cat food companies. And so, of course, these studies are going to be biased and lean towards whatever food they're trying to sell you. And a lot of these studies are also very fear-mongery, and they're like, if you don't feed this food to your cat's gonna pass away, and I don't like those. In the end, your kitten is not going to pass away because of what food you feed them, 99% of the time. I even put in my notes 99.9% of the time. As long as you are feeding a diet made for kittens, your kittens should be good to go. That's the part I want to stress here. Feed your kittens a diet made for kittens, or the very least made for cats. Do not feed them dog food, do not feed them human food, none of that. Feed them a diet that is made for cats. And that can be a raw food diet, a dry food diet, a wet food diet, whatever food diet you've done your research on and think is best. But it has to be made for kittens, for their health and safety. But if you want some recommendations for food, if you're here, this is maybe the only video you're gonna watch, I'll give you some. Keep in mind, I'm not a vet and I'm not a cat professional necessarily. I'm just someone that's raised a lot of cats, tried a lot of different cat foods, talked to a lot of vets about different cat foods, and these are the ones I like the best. So I like IAMS for both wet food and dry food. I like Purina Pro Plan for both wet food and dry food, and I like Purina One. For dry food specifically, but I'm sure their wet food is good too. And I will link those foods below, along with any other food-related supplies you're going to need for your kitten. Those are affiliate links though, so if you do shop from those, thank you, I will earn a small commission from that, but no pressure to shop from them at all. Okay, so now we've talked kind of about what food is best. In the end, it's whichever kitten food you want. But let's talk about wet food or dry food. Those are the two main categories of kitten food. The wet food or the dry food. I'm not going to touch on the raw food I mentioned because frankly I know nothing about it. I wanted to try it for my cats once and it was way too expensive for me to justify for my 5 cats. So I will say raw food is not necessary. It's so expensive. I mean, if you want to spend the money, go ahead, but wet food or dry food is going to be just great for your cats. This is a massive debate on whether wet food or dry food is better for your cats. It kind of comes down to personal preference and your cat's personal preference. I would say, based off of the research, wet food is probably better for your cat. But it all depends on what your cat likes and what your budget is. Wet food is going to be more expensive than dry food most of the time because they do have to eat a couple cans a day, whereas dry food, you get one big baggie, it lasts for a while, you're good there. Dry food is cheaper, so if you need to go for that, go for that. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to hurt your cat, because it's not. There are plenty of cats that live off of dry food and water only their entire life, and they live to be 20. It's not going to hurt your cat to feed them only dry food as long as they're drinking enough water. For me, 3 of my resident cats are on a dry food only diet, and that is because that is what they prefer. 2 of my resident cats I sometimes supplement with wet food. That's Smee and Zero, my younger ones. Zero doesn't really need it, but she begs for it. And then Smee, sometimes I give it to him just if I feel like he's not getting enough dry food. So that's on the wet food or dry food issue. It's really up to you, and it's not going to hurt your cats to feed them dry food, despite what many people on the internet say. And I'm not trying to say I'm the know-all be-all for cat care, but I think a lot of information on the internet is very fearmongery, and they're trying to convince you to buy a product because they earn a commission off of it and not necessarily actually thinking about, does your cat actually need this? And the answer most of the time is they're going to be just fine with a regular wet food or regular dry food, or a mix of both. You can also do a mix of both. Now let's talk about how much you should feed, because this is also a big question. If you've never had cats before, you're like, I just bought a big bag of cat food and I don't know how much they're supposed to eat. I would say, talk to your vet, because your vet will know your specific kitten the best. Your vet will be able to tell about your specific kitten because of their size and health, but there are some general guidelines for kittens. For kittens, while they're growing, I do free feed dry food. This is because they are growing a lot. They need that protein, they need the energy, and so I do free feed their dry food for my foster kittens. And then I give them 1 regular sized can of kitten food, wet kitten food, per day. And I feed half a can twice a day. So that's just going to be a good amount to get them growing, to keep their bellies full so that they can focus on that growing, because they are definitely growing a lot. Adult cats, it's different because it is very easy to overfeed piggy cats. There are cats that will just eat any, and they don't need that much food. In some cases though, it's the only option to free feed. For example, in my household, I have one very skittish cat that would just let the other cats eat her food if we offered them food on a schedule, and she would just never eat. She would never get fed. So we do have to give her ample food so that they can free feed the big boys. They don't need it. They probably eat a little too much, but she needs it so that she can eat. She needs to not be competing for her food, because she would just give up and not eat. As for the specific numbers of how much to feed your adult cat, I'm gonna link an article below about that, because I don't want to just rattle off numbers here. That sounds boring, but I will link that below for you to go look at. Oh, and for my adult cats, I didn't mention, I do feed them a Purina One food. It is a grain-free food. I do not think you need a grain-free food. Grain is not bad for cats. The reason I feed a grain-free food is because 2 of my cats are allergic to grain. So if a cat is allergic to something, of course you don't want to feed them what they're allergic to, as just the same thing with people. But grain is absolutely fine. There's really a lot of ingredients that are speculated about on whether they're good for cats or not, and if they're in cat food, it's probably going to be safe. Again, it's another one of those things where it's fearmongery. Let's go with some ending notes. One last time, I would like to say make sure you are feeding a diet for cats. And if possible, feed a diet for their life stage. They make different foods for kittens, for cats, for seniors that are more suited to their specific needs. But if you have a big household of cats of all ages, just make sure the kitten's getting a little bit of kitten food, even if that's just in wet food that you're feeding them separate from the rest of the household, and then they eat cat food for the rest. Just kittens, make sure they get at least some kitten food. And then if you have like a senior and a regular cat, it's okay if the senior eats regular cat food, like it's not gonna hurt them. But if you can, feed them a diet for their life stage. But again, it's just important that they are eating a diet made for cats. And I'm reiterating this so much because you'd be surprised at the amount of people that don't feed their cats cat food. But that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like it and subscribe for more kitten-related content, as well as the next episodes of this series, A Beginner's Guide to Kitten Care. I upload on Sundays and on Wednesdays if I can, and if I can't, then I do upload whenever I'm able to. Also, please make sure to leave any thoughts or questions that you have down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching again, and goodbye.